really did not get along
in real life.
In real life.
I did not know this.
Yeah. Like we didn't get. But every single week before taping, we'd come together, we'd put our hands together, we'd bow, and we'd pray before we go out there.
Whatever happened to integrity, man, huh? How many brothers got to wear?
Malcolm Jamal Warner, widely known for starring in the hit TV sitcom The Cosby Show, has died.
Two warriors who couldn't stand each other, yet still prayed side by side before stepping into battle. For 4 long years, Malcolm Jamal Warner and Eddie Griffin buried their grudges to fight a hidden war Hollywood didn't want the world to see. For more than a decade, Eddie Griffin's been warning everybody about Hollywood's dark mission to break down black men who refuse to bow down. He called it the emasculation program, and while people laughed at him back then, nothing could have prepared him for what went down with his former co-star. On July 20th, 2025, the news hit. Malcolm Jamal Warner was gone, but Eddie didn't just send some dry RIP post. Oh no, he dropped a straight-up bombshell on Instagram, exposing what really took him out. He wrote,
The actor Malcolm Jamal Warner, widely known for starring in the hit TV sitcom The Cosby Show, has died.
My heart is heavy today, for what the world lost was a father, a son, a poet, a musician, an actor, a teacher, a writer, a director, a friend, a warrior that I had the pleasure of going to war with against the Hollywood machine and sometimes with each other. That's what brothers do. But the love was and is always there. Eddie didn't say they worked in Hollywood. He said they went to war with it. That's not showbiz talk. That's battle talk. That's the kind of language you use when someone's life gets taken by an enemy. The war kicked off during Malcolm and Eddie. Both of them thought they were walking into a chance to create positive black TV, but instead, they stepped onto a battlefield where every script was a fight and every episode was an act of resistance. The system wanted them dancing like trained monkeys, not leading with pride. Malcolm wasn't talking about creative differences, he was talking about psychological warfare. They tried to twist America's favorite TV son into degrading himself just to keep the machine fed. When he refused, the machine turned on him quick. The show hit 88 episodes, just 12 short of that syndication bag, the kind of money that secures generational wealth, and then canceled. Why? Because Malcolm and Eddie wouldn't play their role. That's when they both learned the truth. You can fight Hollywood, but you'll never win. Because the machine always has a bigger weapon. And if you get too bold, if you start exposing too much truth, Hollywood's machine has a final solution. Eddie Griffin's been yelling about this for years. His comedy specials weren't just jokes. They were coded intelligence reports straight out of the war zone. He exposed the so-called emasculation program. Look around, almost every major black male star has been pushed into wearing a dress on screen. That's not comedy, that's conditioning. Break their image, strip their masculinity, humiliate them publicly, then pay them in fame and checks. But Eddie's scariest prediction came when he warned about Bill Cosby. Long before the headlines, Eddie said,
So it was, for me, it was like going from a top university to junior college. Because I'm saying, look, we can actually be funny without doing the stereotypical stuff. And no one was really interested in that route. They're like, we didn't bring you over here for that. This is what we do.
No black entertainer leaves Hollywood with dignity intact. He wasn't guessing. He was reading from the playbook. Michael Jackson, Bill Cosby, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, every time a black man built real independent power, here came a scandal timed too perfectly. And notice the double standard. When white stars get caught up, it's just personal mistakes. But when it's black stars, suddenly it's proof of stereotypes. That's psychological warfare designed to scare every other entertainer into compliance. But then Malcolm Jamal Warner broke the cycle. In his last year, the man who spent decades playing it safe flipped the script. His Instagram turned into a battlefield. He started firing off raw truths, blasting holes in the programming Eddie had been exposing all along. This wasn't just poetry. This was Malcolm Jamal Warner calling out the programming of Black America in plain sight. He broke down how the music we're fed is carefully engineered to celebrate destruction, while the industry profits off conditioning audiences to embrace traits planted by their captors. And he didn't stop there. He started naming the puppet masters pulling the strings. The timing was explosive. Diddy facing federal charges, Epstein's shadow creeping back into headlines, corruption finally being dragged into the light, and here comes Malcolm, standing like a credible witness to decades of psychological warfare.
Even though we were at odds, what we both understood is we get to 100 episodes, we're going to have a sweet vacation deal. Ultimately, they cut us at 88 because they were tired. They were tired of me fighting with the writers, and then they were tired of Eddie's shenanigans.
Fair. His final video is haunting, a man who knew he was living on borrowed time. You could see it, the forced smiles, the desperate positivity, the promise of, I'll be back soon. It read like a goodbye he wasn't allowed to say. Then 3 days later, he turns up in the waters off Costa Rica. Official story, accidental drowning. No witnesses, no foul play. Just another tragic accident that conveniently silenced a truth teller who had become too dangerous. Eddie Griffin's warnings weren't conspiracy theories. He was documenting a pattern, from Cosby to MJ to Kobe, and now Malcolm Jamal Warner. He wasn't just defending fallen legends, he was exposing the playbook, the timing, the method, and how the machine eats its own when they stop obeying. In one explosive interview, Eddie Griffin broke the whole Cosby situation down like a chessboard. He said the allegations followed a predictable pattern, timed to hit maximum psychological and financial damage. He pointed out the timing. Those decades-old accusations just happened to resurface when Cosby was at peak power, trying to buy NBC and take back his creative empire. Eddie pressed deeper. Why would women knowingly walk into private hotel rooms with a married man whose family image was global, then stay silent for 30 years before speaking up? His point wasn't about Cosby.
Black man does something, it says, John Jones, blacklist, said black, black, black. Now, if a white man does it, it isn't white man Jones, it's just a man.
His guilt or innocence. It was about the system. Eddie showed how Hollywood runs coordinated media campaigns to crush black entertainers who get too independent, too wealthy, or too vocal about injustice. That 30-year delay wasn't random. It meant the cases were too old to stand in court, but fresh enough to bury reputations forever. And Eddie said the blueprint always looks the same. Michael Jackson, gone while planning a comeback that would have given him total control. Prince, gone while fighting to own his masters. Whitney Houston, gone just as her story of industry abuse was hitting the spotlight again. And now Malcolm Jamal Warner, so loved by the public he couldn't be smeared like the others, suddenly gone in a Costa Rica drowning accident, right as he started blasting Hollywood's psychological warfare. Eddie warned us for years. The machine always keeps a final solution for the ones who won't bow down. When reputation attacks don't work, when blacklisting fails, the machine always pulls out its final phase.
I am tired of running for shade. And aren't you tired of being hustled and played? And aren't we all tired of crying about how hard it is to be black in America, even if it looks like we've got it made?
Malcolm Jamal Warner had become too dangerous to ignore. His podcast, Not All Hood Shattered Stereotypes the Industry Thrives On. His Instagram poetry blasted the same psychological programming Eddie Griffin had been warning about for years. His interviews linked Hollywood racism to the bigger system of oppression, and the most dangerous part, he was doing it with the credibility of Theo Huxtable. You can't smear America's favorite TV son with the usual gossip. You can't freeze out a man with his resume and connections. So when character hits and career sabotage failed, the machine escalated. 3 days after Malcolm's body was pulled from Costa Rican waters, Eddie Griffin dropped a tribute that sent chills through everyone already connecting the dots. He wrote, "My heart is heavy today. For what the world lost was a father, a son, a poet, a musician, an actor, a teacher, a writer, a director, a friend, a warrior that I had the pleasure of going to war with against the Hollywood machine, and sometimes with each other because that's what brothers do, but the love was and is always there." Every word was loaded with military code. Malcolm wasn't an entertainer. He was a warrior. Hollywood wasn't their job. It was the machine. Eddie's message wasn't just grief. It was confirmation for anyone who knew how to read between the lines. And the speed of his response?
You know, life is out here lifing, right? For me and for everybody else. But just wanted to remind you, as I remind myself, that no matter what's going on, there's always a reason to smile.
Instant. No polished PR statement, no delay, just raw, unfiltered truth, like a man who had been bracing for that call all along. Malcolm had stopped playing chess with the industry, and the machine made its move. In his final months, Malcolm Jamal Warner was fighting on all fronts. His podcast was tearing down systematic programming. His Instagram poetry was exposing psychological warfare. And his interviews were linking Hollywood corruption straight to bigger patterns of racial oppression. He had crossed the line. from controlled resistance into dangerous truth-telling. And Eddie Griffin's tribute showed the machine reacted exactly how he'd been warning for years. But to really understand Malcolm's final transformation, you have to know about Michelle Thomas, the woman whose passing in 1998 shaped every move he made for the next 27 years. Michelle wasn't just a co-star, she was his moral compass, his anchor, maybe even his guide from beyond. On The Cosby Show, she played Justine Phillips, Theo's sweet and brilliant girlfriend, the symbol of positive black love on TV. But off camera, Michelle and Malcolm's bond went way deeper than their characters ever did. Michelle Thomas came from Boston, raised by Caribbean immigrant parents who drilled her with unshakable values. She walked into Hollywood with her spirit intact, and unlike so many young actresses who got pressured into compromising roles, she never sold herself out. Michelle picked her projects with care.
To be a conscious artist of color, you're constantly having to pick your battles. And, at some point you have to, really decide what your boundaries are. What are the things that you undoubtedly stand for.
Spoke boldly about representation and refused to let fame twist her integrity. Malcolm didn't just fall for Michelle Thomas's beauty. He fell for her integrity in an industry built to crush young black talent. Michelle was rare, someone who could walk through Hollywood without losing herself. Their 5-year relationship became Malcolm's blueprint for surviving the game without selling his soul. Then cancer struck Michelle at just 28. Malcolm watched the love of his life fight with the same fearless clarity she carried into everything else. Even staring down her final days, Michelle called it the highest choice, refusing to let fear or bitterness control her spirit. And when she took her last breath, Malcolm was there, literally climbing into the hospital bed to hold her as she slipped away. This wasn't Hollywood grief for cameras. This was a man losing the only person who had kept his soul intact. For the next 27 years, Michelle became his moral jeep. Every career move, every public word, every moment of temptation went through one question: what would Michelle do? It wasn't nostalgia. It was survival in an industry designed to corrupt. But in his final year, something shifted. The Malcolm who once played the game carefully stopped being diplomatic. His last Instagram post, like the one about being tired of running for shade, showed a man who was done with compromise. For the first time, he stepped fully into the raw, unfiltered truth-telling Michelle would have been proudest of. Malcolm stopped playing chess with Hollywood. No more managed resistance. He started speaking with the same moral fire that made Michelle Thomas untouchable in her time. Too pure for Hollywood to corrupt and too dangerous for the machine to let live. He had made the highest choice Michelle always stood for: truth at any cost. But Eddie Griffin knew exactly what that meant. His tribute wasn't just grief. It was a coded record of a warrior executed for refusing to bow. The conspiracy theorists who questioned Malcolm's drowning weren't paranoid. They were connecting dots. In an industry where Diddy is facing federal charges for decades of abuse, where Epstein's shadow runs straight through entertainment, and where corruption is finally being dragged into daylight. Do you really think the loss of a credible witness is ever just an accident? Malcolm Jamal Warner didn't simply drown in Costa Rica. He was removed because his voice had become too powerful, too dangerous, too undeniable for the machine to ignore. From his final Instagram poetry about psychological warfare, to his podcast ripping apart stereotypes, to his interviews tying Hollywood racism to the bigger system, Malcolm had become living proof of Eddie's warnings. And when the truth gets that loud, the machine always makes its move. All of Malcolm's work, his podcast, his poetry, his interviews, was tearing at the walls of systematic oppression. And that's exactly what made him a target. Eddie Griffin's raw, immediate tribute doubled as an obituary and a battle cry. By calling Malcolm a warrior who died fighting the Hollywood machine, Eddie confirmed what so many had whispered but few dared say out loud: this is a war. The casualties keep piling up, and the machine will eliminate anyone who threatens its grip on black voices and narratives. Malcolm Jamal Warner's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was the living proof of Eddie's most chilling warning. In Hollywood's war against conscious black entertainers, nobody walks away clean, and the ones who refuse to stay silent, they don't get to walk away at all. The machine claimed another warrior, but Eddie's confirmation made sure this loss won't be forgotten or written off as just another accident. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you on the next one.